Welcome, scholars, storytellers, and fellow babysitter DMs. This is a Level Up Corner, led by yours truly, Wizo, as we delve into all the tips and tricks about Dungeons & Dragons. Today's topic is, how do you tell a good DM from a bad DM? Luckily, there are a few warning signs that help you differentiate how to tell if it's a bad DM. The first warning sign is anything that makes you feel scared or uneasy. Now, we can feel uncomfortable. That can be alright. For example, certain situations that are tense in a horror setting, that's fine. But uneasy or scared is reflective upon you as a personal level. If you are scared for your life, obviously, that's a big warning sign. You should not be with that DM, and if anyone in the group in general makes you feel scared, this is also very bad. If the DM makes you feel uneasy because they slick their hair back and say, "Hey babe, what you doing after session?" That's not scary, but that's uneasy. These are the general warning signs where you know something is off and you need to listen to yourself. A lot of the times players do not. They just pass it off like, oh, well, it's just a misunderstanding or something else. Listen to yourself. So many times I've had this happen with players or seen them. Well, I've heard horror stories of this happening with players that they have these horrific DMs and they knew these terrible things were going on. They could tell it just made them uneasy. It was almost scary at times, but they didn't stick up for themselves or they didn't leave. They just thought, oh, it'll get better. It doesn't get better. It doesn't 99% of the time unless you talk to the DM. In most of these situations, you don't talk to the DM, so you should get out. A second warning sign is temper. If the DM is constantly getting mad, or when you say, magic missile automatically hits, it says in the book, and they say, well, in my world it doesn't, then you should probably take that as a very big warning sign if they ever lose their temper with you as a player. Not your character, and they can be frustrated at situations when you roll 2 nat 20s and you crit, smite, kill a giant creature that they were not expecting you to do, yeah, I could see some frustration, but not anger at you as a player, more frustration at the situation. If they're ever angry at you, or just have a general temper, then you should probably take that as a warning sign. Now, a much more subtle issue that is a warning sign and a way to tell if there's a bad DM is if they're dismissive of players. Now, what do I mean by this? This is a bit more subtle, but usually it's along the lines of, hey, I think magic missile always hits. It says so in the book. And it's like, oh yeah, it says that, but that's not actually the case. Okay, why? It's just not the case. They don't explain their reasoning. They didn't explain it to you beforehand. They didn't look it up with you. They just dismiss it. Or when you ask, why is something the way it is? And they just, well, it just is the way it is. And then they go along with it. It's okay sometimes if there's a story purpose for it. Like, for example, hey, why didn't that lever open the door? And it's like, oh, it just didn't. It's like, okay, that's not necessarily dismissive of you as a player. That's just you don't have the information. But if you're asking about something that you have all the information for and that you are generally confused about, they shouldn't dismiss you. They shouldn't put you in a corner. And also, they shouldn't just in every session skip over you. Oh, what do you do on your turn? Okay, all right. So, Lexi, what do you do? Okay, you slash into him. Yeah, very nice. And then they go back to your turn. All right, so you cast Magic Missile. Cool. 4 damage. All right. So, hey, Brad, what you doing? Oh, you're pushing him? Wow, that's so awesome. Yeah, they're just dismissing you. They're being dicks. So you can view that as a giant warning sign of a bad DM. A fourth warning sign, very obvious. They are visibly unprepared. Now, us DMs, gotta say, we prep and doesn't mean as much as we hope it does. So we are almost always unprepared, especially for whenever players surprise us. But DMs shouldn't be constantly showing this. If it happens once or twice where the DM is a little bit baffled or doesn't seem to have notes for the appropriate situation, it's fine, it happens to all of us. But if they come every single session and you can tell that they don't know what they're doing, they're, all right, rolling dice, you can see it in their face, especially their eyes, that they have almost fear in it, that they are unprepared for what is going to happen, or it just seems that everything's lackluster because they are just going and don't have a plan. That's also a very bad warning sign, since your DM is not going to take you somewhere. You're not going to have a wonderful journey that you guys are experiencing together. Instead, it's just a DM scrambling. That's a very bad DM. The last one is, we kind of already covered this a little bit, but the DM's trying to hook up. At times I've seen this happen, whether it's a female DM or a male DM, it doesn't matter. DMs can try to hook up with players. This is seen through favoritism. This is seen through their interactions. This is seen through just like the amount of attention they pay to another person. If they ever favor another individual, then that's a bad sign. But especially hooking up with someone, like, you don't, if it happens naturally, okay, that's fine. But if they are trying to push it, that is a very bad sign. Now, we've gone over a few different ways, overt and subtle, to tell if a DM is bad, and you should listen to these warning signs. Don't ignore them like most players do. But how do you tell if a DM's good? Well, there are many different DMs and different types of ways to play. But the first sign to tell if a DM is good is if you're having fun. Now, yes, granted, some DMs have different styles and have different games, and you just join the wrong game. That is a much rarer case. But the usual way to tell if a DM's good is if you're having fun with the session. DMs can DM in 1,000 different ways, but, my friend, at the end of the day, the goal for D&D is for you and your friends and the DM to come together, relax, have fun, enjoy yourselves. If you're not having fun, why are you doing this? This is supposed to be fun. And that's the biggest sign to tell if your DM is good. It's if you're having fun. The second sign to tell if your DM is a good DM is if your DM actually cares about you and the others. Now, by caring, it can be a lot of different variations and levels. It could be a almost obsessive caring, which you should tone down because that's encroaching on the uneasy feeling for a bad DM. But if they care about your backstory, if they care about your character's motivations, if they care about you being comfortable at the table, if they care about you getting what you want out of this campaign. I constantly, for example, am trying to figure out what my players want. Do they want more combat? Do they want more RP? I'm not necessarily asking them, but I'm throwing it through situations and then adjusting the situations as the players show interest. If you see that your DM is putting forth the effort, using your backstories, using things that are important to you in the story, or even just addressing it, then that's the sign of a good DM. The third sign that shows if you have a good DM is if they're challenging themselves. Now, this is harder for you to spot as a player, but as a DM, it's very easy to fall into a rut of just, oh man, session's coming up. Let's see. Dungeon? Yeah, I've done like 17 of those before. Yeah, I'll throw them in a dungeon. I'll reuse this other dungeon that I've got, and, it's fine. And it's not really good because the DM doesn't care as much, generally, if they are reusing constant content in the past or just doing the same old, same old. A good DM should be challenging themselves, trying to do something new, and not necessarily throwing themselves to the wind and saying, like, hey guys, I have a whole new system to play and this whole new thing. Just doing anything to challenge themselves, possibly voices, even if they're bad at it, if they're trying to make a different type of plot, they're trying to involve the gods, if they're stepping outside of their comfort zone. And you can see this with the amount of effort that they are putting forth. Granted, it is a little bit harder to tell, but if you've been with this DM for a while and you see that they are constantly trying new things and stepping outside of their comfort zone to make sure that you have a more interesting experience, then you have a really good DM. And the fourth and most final piece of how to tell if you have a good DM is if they are honest and stick to their word. Now, being honest is a little bit wonky and hard to define. Sometimes, yes, DMs do fudge dice. But what I mean by more honest is keeping their word when they have already given it or when it counts. For example, I say that a group check, unless it's stealth, is only 2 players, the first 2 rolls. I need to make sure that you stick by that. I can't say that, oh, well, you made your first roll and that's the one that counts, even though the second roll for the person in the group was higher. I need to stick by what I say. I need to have a rule set, a framework put out there so that we can come together and play a game that matters and not just have me making up things on the fly. I need to be kept honest. And I need to be able to stay in the framework of what I've set for you all. I need to not constantly cheat. I need to make sure that you have some belief in my integrity as a DM. And if there's an issue, then we can go over it and we can address it. But I can't keep changing things or going back on my word. What shows you if you have a good or a bad DM? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Definitely tell me, and let's get this conversation going. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can stay up to date with more tips and tricks about Dungeons & Dragons, so that we can share this wonderful content and get more people in on this conversation. Lastly, always remember that your players love and appreciate you. This has been Wizo, and keep rolling, my friends. Keep rolling.